The Oxford Companion to the Human Mind, edited by Richard Gregory, contains a subsection titled Military Incompetence, which cites a study surveying costly military disasters such as the Tet Offensive of Vietnam, the Bay of Pigs incident, and the Franco-Prussian War, among others, wherein the leading research question seeks to establish a common pattern of errors that accounts for the disastrous consequences of these events. In all the aforementioned cases, factors constantly identified as causal blunders include failure to undertake adequate reconnaissance, an asinine affinity to engage in frontal assaults, particularly against the enemy's strongest position, a predilection for and belief in brute force as a tactic superior to clever ruses, a failure to make use of surprise and deception, and perhaps most importantly, a tendency to underestimate the enemy. The precept that asserts that all successful warfare is predicated on deception is a foundation for strategies employing the unorthodox to weaponize an enemy's ignorance or incapacity to fathom the true potentials of allied espionage assets in the field. The Ninjutsu sub-discipline of Henso no Jutsu, or a shinobi no mono's art of disguise, is purposed for this end. Each disguise is tailor-fit to efficiently achieve the objectives of an operation, be they surveillance, infiltration, sabotage, misdirection, or a combination thereof. But the effectiveness of a disguise is ultimately determined by its viability in inducing the enemy and neutral observers to underestimate appearances to such an extent that it becomes a reach of the mind to even consider you as a threat. Doing this requires furoho, or not exposing one's edge, concealing strength and appurtenances of what is considered weakness. As the adage goes, a skilled hawk hides its talons, implying advantage in appearances of harmlessness or even incompetence. The 6th century text of ancient China, known as the 36 Stratagems, instantiates this tactic in its description of jiaqibu dian, or feigning madness while retaining inner balance. Pretending to be incompetent, stupid, or mentally ill creates confusion in the enemy's estimations of your intentions and motivations, leading the opponent to underestimate your abilities and drop their guard. And so we are told within the Bonsen Shukai of a man named Shindo Kotaro, a shinobi no mono who gained entrance to Arata Castle under the guise of an individual afflicted with intellectual and physical disabilities. To castle guards, he was just a deaf and dumb person, hardly a threat one need watch or be mindful of when discussing sensitive matters. But their underestimation of him could not have been worse. I know it sounds oxymoronic, but truly, in weakness there is strength. The mind of a shinobi must be one to identify the advantages in disadvantageous situations, or the light and presence of shadow, if you will. An example of weakness becoming great strength can be found in the story of Zhuge Liang, one of the greatest military tacticians of Chinese history, who was once considered as nothing more than a bookish intellectual with a penchant for philosophy, history, and statecraft. He was not a fighter, nor had he any experience of leading an army. Yet his reputation for wisdom garnered the attention of Liu Bei, leader of the Shu kingdom. Liang eventually became Liu Bei's chief strategist, and he evinced a genius on the battlefield that emphasized outsmarting opponents rather than relying on brute force to conquer. It is said that his success in war is attributed to his seeming weakness of intellectuality. We underestimate opponents when we cannot see the value of their characteristics in ever-shifting contexts. Take water, for example. A cup of it is innocuous enough, even life-giving, yet torrents of it can drown cities and cut deep chasms in the earth. When frozen, it can fracture stone. Variables of temperature, proportions, time, and space drastically alter the perception of water as just innocuous. In the right conditions, it becomes lethal. This is a lesson in the camouflage that our minds naturally applies to objects and entities in our world. What we perceive to be strong and powerful may turn out to be weak and impotent under the right circumstances. So too, what is perceived as weakness can become one's greatest strength.